Okay guys, doing a quick video because I get a lot of comments, some in chat and as well as that from other people saying that AMS2 sometimes feels floaty, and that the cars feel floaty and stuff like that, but a lot of this is actually down to the camera settings, right? And I had this in all sims. AMS2 out of the box is probably the worst because the setup of the camera is quite floaty. The physics of the cars aren't really, but it can give a false impression. So what I've done, I've messed around with the camera here to show a floaty feel, and I've come to Virginia because there's a lot of left-right G-force sections. But let's just watch the rest of this lap, and I'll open it up, and you'll see a lot of head movement, and the car will actually feel like it's floaty to drive. But let's have a look. So you can see like a lot of camera movement left and right with the G-forces, and it's giving a complete... It's given an impression, it's almost like the car is floating around underneath me. Now, I've exaggerated the actual effects, but the car feels like it's almost on a sheet of air almost. It doesn't feel planted. My camera, my view is on the screen, and because obviously I'm in a seat, I'm not moving, right? And it's almost impossible for me to judge what's going on. Let's just return to the pit box, and we'll see that again. Let me just start the ignition. But you'll see what I mean. It's like the car feels like it's floating underneath, and it doesn't give you that planted feel. It's difficult to judge the corners, and it's almost like the car is like a pendulum underneath you as you drive. And like I say, I have exaggerated these settings a little bit, again, just to prove the point. No grip on the tires, don't hit the wall, right. So what I'll do a couple of more corners, and then I'll do the camera adjustments that I recommend everyone makes. But you get the idea, okay? So people say that AMS2 feels a bit floaty. This is why. It's impossible for me to actually judge because I'm not used to driving with cameras like this, right? But let's return to the pit. Let us, actually before we drive, let's go into the camera settings and make the changes right now. I have exaggerated this. So in the camera settings, the head movement you want down to a bare minimum, right? I run this at about 5 or 7, just a teeny bit of movement purely for immersion. Lateral G-force effect, get that off completely. So all the way back to 0 on these, and the G-force longitudinal. So this is both the left, right, and up, down movement, or sorry, left, right, forward, and back, and then this, the vertical effect is the up, down movement. So again, I have this turned completely off. Helmet look to apex, and we'll have that down to 0 as well. Head movement, I'll put it on 3 just to filter out something, just so we're not bouncing around. 4 or 5, I don't know, whatever. Now, let us ignition start. And let's see the difference in this. So just a minute ago, the way we were floating all over the place, now my camera is locked to the car, and I don't feel floaty at all. Let's do a few corners, you'll see what I mean. So straight away, there's no movement of the camera versus the car. I'm able to judge the entry a lot better now. Cold tires, so maybe I just went in a bit deep, but I'm able to feel the car planted a lot more. And certainly, I've done a video recently enough on this as well about the types of feedback we have as sim racers, right? So we have obviously the force feedback, but then we also have visual cues. And for the force feedback to be of the most use to you, right, you need to have the camera and your view settled where the car is. So basically what the car does, the feedback needs to react to straight away. And look at this, how the difference involved, how much kind of extra confidence I have, you know, purely because the camera's not bouncing around the place. I can see what I'm doing. Everything is much more settled, it's more planted. And yeah, so anyone that thinks the AMS2 feels a little bit floaty, like physics aside, and the physics I don't really think are floaty unless you go for an old type car with soft suspension, and yes, it will feel floaty, but this is not really floaty, certainly not with this camera setting compared to the one I had a few minutes ago. But yeah, you get the point. So What I would say to people is go in, adjust the cameras. I'll show the camera setting again, just to round it out. High speed shake off. Again, I just like to have it on 0. This increases the smoothing and filtration of bumps in the cockpit, which is fine. I don't mind a teeny bit of filtration just so we're not bouncing around the place. But everything else, like all of the big ones, like the lateral G-force effect, the longitudinal G-force effect, all of that, I would prefer to have off, and it gives a much better feeling of the car being planted. With the other ones, with the G-force, let's say turned up, the car did feel floaty. It was difficult for me to feel where I was versus where the car was, because the camera effectively was moving around too much underneath me, and it literally felt, if you can imagine, that the car is on a pivot, and as I turned, it was like rocking back and forward on that pivot, kind of like a pendulum on a grandfather clock. And I do remember that I had exactly that feeling when I first fired up AMS2 and I took the Formula 122 car around Imola, again another bumpy type track, and I thought, this is totally weird. And then I went into the camera settings, and as soon as I made those changes, massive improvement. But yeah, leave it there, guys. Hopefully this has helped some people, and hopefully this has cured some of the floatiness that people can sometimes talk about in AMS2. Thanks again for watching, guys, and hopefully this benefits a few of you. Cheers.